In this video, we're going to talk about hybrid modeling, and we are going to use DesignX to show this concept or this style of modeling. We had someone that 3D scanned a part themselves, and then they were trying to model it and really struggled with it. So they basically sent us the scan data and paid us to model it, because hybrid modeling can be a bit of a challenge. It's a little bit of a different concept if you're just used to traditional like sketch-driven modeling or even just kind of standard surface modeling. It's definitely a little bit different. And what it is, it's an auto manifold, so it's very weird shaped, but yet at the same time, it does have some more prismatic shapes on it. So the question is, how do you work and how do you model something like this? So, and the scan data itself is not the best. It's okay, we can work with it, but you can see some of the areas, just the edges and stuff, just weren't scanned well. It's kind of a little bit of a low fidelity, but it's definitely workable. So as you can see by the shape of this thing, it's very organic. And if you were trying to do traditional, let's say like lofting type surfacing or even extrusions or sweeping, it's just really, really tough to do. So we're going to walk you through. This is a great example of what we call hybrid modeling. So first thing we're going to do to get started is make a copy of the mesh. Okay. And we'll hit OK. So we're just hitting the copy command. I'm going to hide the original. And first thing I'm going to want to do is clean it up. There's definitely some rough areas on this part. I also want to simplify the part. And what I mean by that is getting rid of some of the data. And this will hopefully make more sense here shortly. So all the prismatic stuff where I've got more sharp corners and stuff, in this mesh, I'm going to get rid of it, okay? And certainly a few ways to do that. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to come kind of in a straight-on view. I'm going to select my circle command. I'm going to turn visible only off, and I'm going to select that. Now, by doing that, it's going to select other areas of the part, and that's okay. I'll explain that more in a minute. But I want to make sure I don't, if there's any underhanging triangles, if I don't do it this way, it won't get them. So I just, again, come straight on, and I'm going to get rid of these features completely. And if I kind of angle on this one, I won't get any data behind it. Okay, so I've got all that. Now I'm going to go to my more of my polygon tool. Then I'm going to hold down my control key. So it's your shift key to add to your selection and your control key to take away. Okay. So I've just found it's just easier to select with the visible or everything on through, I guess you could call it, and then go and just find the data and get rid of it, because I don't want to, miss data that might be slightly underneath other data. So once I have that, I'm just going to delete them. Okay. Because I don't want those anymore. And then let's fill those areas in. So we'll use under our polygon, we're going to use our hole fill command. I'll pick these holes. And we'll go with curvature. I'm not going to go into a lot of these commands. I mean, we have other videos. We really want to just stick to the concept of the hybrid modeling. So that looks good. Now I'll come in here to my smart tool using my smooth command, crank up my strength, and just kind of smooth out. It's kind of like digital sandpaper. The more you work an area, the smoother it gets. So the more you go over. So I'm going to go around this whole part and just try to smooth any areas, that are rough. This thing had kind of a rough surface to it. So we'll just go through and smooth some things out a little bit. I mean, as long as we have the basic shape here, but anything rough we'll get rid of. A lot of these manifolds, you can see like here, see how it's kind of narrower. A lot of times they're fitting it in very specific areas. So you can see it's a really odd shape. Okay. All right. I think that's pretty good. All right. We got a little dimple there. And what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to use the defeature command, and I'll go back to the circle select, Pick that. That'll basically delete it and fill it back in. Just wouldn't, the smoothing just wouldn't get it. It was probably too sharp of a point. Let's go back here again. All right, so that's pretty good. Okay, so we've got it smoothed out. Next thing we want to take a look at is the ends of the part. Now, this end here is pretty clean. Looks okay. This end here, you can kind of see it's kind of jagged, and then we have where the triangles are kind of curving over the edge here. We're going to want to clean that up, and you'll see why in the next command. So what I'm going to do, now normally there's a couple ways you could do this. One is you can trim by plane. So I could create a plane in here on this edge or offset in a little bit and then trim it. The problem is when I go to trim it, it actually trims the whole piece off because I've already tried it. So I created a plane, but then it trims because it's a plane, so it goes indefinitely. And it trims off here, and then I tried to sew it back together, and it just didn't work. So I'm going to use, so we're talking about the split command here. So if I say by entity, so I'm just going to draw a line. You can do just a polyline. So I'm going to get it right in here in a true kind of position. And then I'm just going to draw points. And this doesn't have to be perfect. You'll see why here in the next step. And then I'll hit next. And it always seems to pick the wrong side I want to keep. So I unselect and then pick this side. So by doing that, it won't get rid of the other side of it, okay? So that'll give us a nice smooth edge here, okay? So we've smoothed it all out, and now we've trimmed. And this one, like I said, that one's pretty clean. So we're good. Okay. So now what we're going to want to do is go to under the global mesh. If you pick that drop down, we have a thing called Rewrap. Okay, and what Rewrap is going to do, and I'm going to extend these boxes out a little bit. I'll explain. Let me get this set up. So, okay, and then geometry capture, we'll keep, I mean, this thing, again, it's just a freeform organic shape. Smoothness is fine. We're going to extend the boundaries. Let's go ahead and try the defaults here, and let's see what we get. I'm going to go one more this way. Actually, we'll do a preview. So what the Rewrap tool does is it goes back, and what it does is it's going to try to close up the mesh. But unlike hole filling, where it just kind of fills it in, Rewrap will, and it depends on these settings, you can see what it's done, okay? So we can control. Let's go back for a minute, and I'll show you. So like if we picked flat, you'll see it won't go far, and it'll close this up, okay? See how it's much closer here? And let me go back, and we're going to put that back to what we had. Let's try going one more to the curve. So what we're trying to do is close this up, but we want to do it, yeah, that looks good, on gentle slopes, right? We want it to curve around and then close, okay? And then what this box does, let's undo it real quick. I'll just show you. Like if my box only went to here, and then we did it, you'll see what happens. You see how it basically won't go beyond that box. Okay, so that's just kind of some constraints, because otherwise, depending on what you're doing, it could go pretty far out. So you can kind of control how far it goes. Okay, so let's go ahead and take that. Now, why did we do this? Okay, I know it looks goofy, but what this is now is all closed up so that we can auto surface it. Okay, because if we just left those edges, a lot of times the auto surf on the edges is not very good. Plus, we had to trim back into the manifold. So you'll see later, we're going to trim this back out at the true edge. So that gives us just more distance on that, okay? All right, so that looks pretty good. You could do, more smoothing or whatever you want, but that's fine. Now what we're going to do is auto surface this, okay? So we're going to use, under add-ins, the legacy auto surface. And the reason I use this over the traditional auto surface is it just has a lot of controls. I can do more with it. I really like the original auto surface, so I'm gonna use that. Now, there's a lot of options in here, and we could spend a lot of time. One thing nice in Design X, if you hit the F1 key, whatever command you're in, it'll bring up the help for that particular command. So you can go through and read all about it, okay? But it's very powerful in many ways. So let's get it kind of started here. You can control so much, but I'm going to go feature following. I'm going to try to keep the patches simple. I don't have to worry about hole filling because this is pretty good. And I'll keep everything else the same. So what it's going to do is it's going to build a curved network, and I pick feature following, which is going to be more organic and try to follow the shape more. But you could do more square patches. You could tell it the exact number of patches you want, but it's basically going to go through and create surface patches, okay? And you can see what it's done, and it's going to try to follow the shape, and you can come in and start moving these around and do all kinds of things. But let's go ahead and take that and see what happens, okay? So you basically get a preview. If you don't like it, you can go back, okay? So what we end up with is now we have a solid body made up of auto surface patches, okay? Because again, trying to loft or sweep or extrude, it would just be so difficult. And at the end of the day, as long as I get a solid body, this is not something where I'm going to go and edit sketches and try to rework this. We're going to manufacture this part. We want the shape exactly the way it is. So as long as it's, a solid or surface model that we can, give to somebody to generate a mold or whatever, or machine something, we should be fine because we're not going to want to change this. Okay. So that is now a solid body, and you can see it here over in our tree. Okay. So we went from a mesh to a solid. Now, if we want, we can use our accuracy analyzer on it, and we're set at 0.004 of an inch, and that's more than enough accuracy. So everything is in green. We're fine. You see a slight difference right here. You can see the solid sticking through, and right over there a little, but again, for this, it's fine. Okay. So there, we've got that. But now obviously we need to clean it up and do some things, okay? But now we have a solid body. Okay, so what we're going to do now, let's bring back our original mesh, okay, because that still has some of the features we need. And let's just hide our solid for a minute. And then what we're going to do is build these features more in the traditional sketching, type operations. So we're going to build some planes, and we can do this a few different ways. Again, this data is pretty rough. Let's start with this one over here. It's probably the easiest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into model, plane, pick multiple points, and I'm just going to try to, eyeball the kind of the top of it, right? So that's going to give me a plane right there. I'll hit OK. Turn our planes on. And then I'm going to do sketch, mesh sketch, pick this plane. We'll sample down in, kind of get off the radius a little bit. Okay. And then we will build a circle. We'll just fit a circle through there. Okay, so that's at the top. And let's go ahead then, and what we'll do is extrude. And we're going to go down to the body, and we're going to merge it. Okay, so there's our first feature. And let's do this big one next. So again, I could also just draw a line. So, because this is so rough, if I pick the top, so what I could do, let's try this. Let's go to display, transparency, so we can kind of see through it. And try to just, it's kind of tough. Okay. And then I'll come in here. We'll just do them a couple different ways. I'll do a draw line, and just try to kind of get perpendicular. I mean, if you really wanted this perfect, you could drive a cylinder around this feature and then, go from there and then make something perpendicular. I'm just going to, and then what we'll do is an offset, just so we can kind of get to the top somewhere. Let's call that the top. And now we'll do a sketch, mesh sketch, pick that top one. Sample it down in here a little ways. Let's turn that transparency off. Hide that for a minute. We're going to fit a circle through there. You could dimension all these and, drive very specific dimensional results. I'm not going to bother for this. And we're going to extrude, pick that. We're going to go up to the body and we'll merge it. Okay. All right. What do we have left? So obviously a little repetitious. Again, this one is pretty rough. So I'm just going to eyeball it again. Draw a line. Try to get pretty perpendicular. These are just connections. So, I mean, it's not super critical. Offset just so I have one. I guess I don't even need to do that. Let me show you. So let's discard for a minute. Okay. So when we go to do our, let's do our sketch. Oops, wrong sketch. So let's do our mesh sketch. Pick there. We'll just take it right there. That's fine. Okay, so let's draw our circle. Just going to window in. There we go. Got that. And now when we do our extrude, we'll just go in two directions. Okay, so we pick our sketch. Just hide all these planes. And in this direction, we'll just eyeball it here. Get right to the top right there. Let's just assume that's the top. Okay, and then we're going to go opposite direction. And we're going to go up to a body. We'll pick our body and we'll merge. Okay. All right. One last one. Looks like this one I can probably draw a plane on the top. Pick multiple points here, here, and here. Again, this is not ideal scan data, but we'll make it work. And the only downside of, working with somebody else's scan data is it's only as good as either the job they did or the scanner they're using. Okay. And a lot of times it's a little bit of both. Okay. So extrude, merge up to body, and there we go. Okay. So now we have all those. Okay. Now we want to cut off our ends. Okay. So let's go back to our mesh. And hide our solid. So now, well, we'll use, I guess it doesn't matter. We'll use this one, but we'll bring our other mesh on for the other one. So now I need a plane right at the end. This should be pretty easy to do. Pick multiple points. And I'll make sure I've got this one turned on. So I'm grabbing the end point. And since we know this is a nice clean edge, we should be good. Okay. And then for this one, we will, let's see, let's just try to, I guess we'll just try to eyeball this best we can. We could either do that plane again, or let's go ahead and try picking on the edge and see if we can get a respectable plane. So right here, right there, and maybe right there. So let's see. So yeah, that looks pretty good. So we'll take a plane there. Okay. So now we have two planes created right there. And now would probably be a good time to save. So let's go ahead and just save our work. We'll call this work 3. I like to save in succession. So I can always roll back through the tree, but I just like saving separate files. And then when I'm done, I delete the old ones if I don't need them. All right. So now let's bring back our main body. Let's turn off the mesh. And let's see if we can make the cut command work. So tool entities will be these two. Target body will be this. Remaining body. Now this should hopefully, not cause any trouble by picking those two, unlike the mesh. Okay, now we get a split line there, but we're two separate bodies. Can we Boolean this together? So let's try this. If not, I'm going to show you another way to do this. A little bit of trial and error. Okay, so actually, I think we're good. We Booleaned that back together. It got rid of those lines. I'm going to call that success. Okay, we can hide our planes. I would say that overall looks good. And now what we're going to do is shell it out. So we're going to click the body. Oh, I had it. Click the body. And then we can pick faces, okay? So that will hollow those faces as well. So for example, that I want hollow, that I want hollow. This one, I know one or two of them actually had kind of a kind of a relief hole. So I think this one, and I think those two had a smaller hole. And 70 thou, I think this is supposed to be 60. And let's let her rip. Okay. So you can see it shelled it out or hollowed it out. And then for these two, we had a smaller hole, if I remember right. Yeah. So these had a smaller hole in there. And for that, what I'm going to do is we can go to Sketch, Mesh Sketch. We'll pick this as our plane. We'll move down, try to get that hole. Let me turn off the solid so you can see it. So you see that little hole right there? That's about as much of it as I'm going to be able to get. And we'll fit a circle. And, you know, if you want a dimension, just to show you that quickly, you know, because normally you would come in dimension. So that's 0.1812. Let's say that's supposed to be 0.1875. Okay. And we'll make that hole and turn back on our solid body. And we will pick that guy. Oh, pick it. Oh, got to tell it what I'm doing. Extrude. We'll go the other way. We don't have to go too far, at least 0.06, and we'll do a cut. Okay, so there's that. And then our last hole over here, it's pretty much the same thing. We are going to do a sketch, mesh sketch, pick that plane, sample down in. Okay, and logic would tell me they're the same size, but let's find out. We can at least start with that. Throw a dimension on there. We're going to just go ahead and make it 0.1875, okay, whether it is or not. Okay, and then same thing, model, extrude, down, cut, okay. So there we go. So let's bring back our original mesh and see what we have, okay. So go back to the mesh and let's turn on our accuracy analyzer. And, you know, overall looks good. Now here you've got some weld material, you know, and these are still, we're still really tight on this stuff. There's a radius. You know, if you want to put the radiuses in here, go right ahead. But those are usually, these are added on and welded. So I'm not going to put that in the CAD model. But overall, I would say that looks pretty darn good. And let's turn off the mesh one more time. So what do we have now? We have a single solid body. And certainly when you export this, it's, you know, some of this stuff could be edited because it's, you know, made up of sketches and cylinders and so forth. But the main body, if we wanted to change that shape, we could actually go back and rework the mesh and it would update it. But what this gives you, let's turn off the edge lines for a minute. Okay. So if you look at this, you know, this is now a solid model that can be exported as a step file, an IGES file, a Parasolid, you know, any CAD file format. And you can see we have a very nice looking CAD model that we can send out to a CAD or you know, machining software. So we pick this guy. It's all one solid body. And like I said, IGES step, Parasolid. Then we've got some direct CATIA formats. So now we can export this as a CAD file for whatever we're going to do. Machining, flow analysis, 3D printing, it doesn't matter. We now have a high quality CAD model. So that's hybrid modeling. It's some very organic, free-form type modeling, and then some very specific sketch-driven modeling. So it's really a great way to do things like this because there's just no other way to do it. If you would like to learn more about how EMS can help you and the products and services we offer, in the description below is a link you can fill out to a quick form, or you can call us at 877-845-2700.